I sipped my whiskey and thought about how banal the evening was turning out to be. We, Claire and I, were with friends, her friends that is, when, despite my objections, or perhaps just to annoy us, she went off to dance with another guy. He seemed random, although at that moment I wouldn't have been surprised if she knew him. When I said it was time to leave, her friends objected. "It's just a dance, Ralph. It doesn't mean anything. He's just a guy who wants to dance. God, don't make a mountain out of a molehill." And her best friend sarcastically remarked, "What's the matter with you, Ralphie? Can't take a little competition?" I wanted to reply that he probably wasn't serious competition for me, but I didn't want to upset her. Besides, Claire would probably clear up any misunderstanding. "No, she can dance with whoever she wants. She's right. I don't own her." I threw a few bills on the table. I figured I probably owed them about $30, but screw them. But she forgets that I don't belong to her either. I don't have to sit here with a bunch of boring idiots and watch some jerk rub up against my ex-wife. I left to the chorus of voices. Ex? Ex. I surprised myself when I actually laughed as I drove away. I left a little before 10. It was almost 3 in the morning. The bottle was almost empty. I didn't sleep because I didn't want to be woken up by arguments and because I wanted to finish the good scotch, since I probably wouldn't be here tomorrow night. I poured the last drops of whiskey when I heard a car pull up to our house. I waited a few minutes, and when the door didn't open, I went to look out the window. The random guy had driven her home, and they were discussing something, parked at our entrance. I was sitting in the dark, so I was sure they couldn't see me through the gap in the curtains. I watched them continue talking for a few minutes. Then my wife leaned over and stroked his cheek with her hand. They leaned toward each other and kissed lightly. Then Claire got out of the car and I returned to my seat. She entered the house fixing her lipstick. Believing that the darkness in the house meant that I was in bed asleep, she calmly continued getting ready, preparing to wake me up to express her outrage at my abandoning her. She didn't notice my presence until I spoke. "Did you get lost on your way home?" She looked up, surprised. I wanted to laugh again when her lipstick smudged slightly, giving her uncertain smile a crooked look. "Number, I waited for you to come back. But you didn't." That's surprising. Both Anne and Bessie said they had to be home by 10 to pick up the children from the babysitter. They hadn't said that today, but it was usually their excuse. "Oh no, they left. They had to go home," she replied casually, hanging her coat in the closet. "So your best friend Izzy drove you home?" I was sure she would dodge the question. "I've told you, don't call her that. Her name is Louise and we call her Lizzie. Your habit of calling her Izzy is simply offensive." So I wasn't going to get an answer to my question. "Well, if that's what she likes, then that bitch needs 6-inch heels." I chuckled at my own wit and took a sip. "So you spent the whole evening at the club?" "Yes." Claire plopped down on another chair, threw her legs up on the armrest, and leaned back. I let the silence linger for a second, then said, "I called, Claire. I called the club at 1 in the morning. I hadn't called, but I was sure she didn't know that." She lied smoothly. "Oh, we stopped at a cafe for coffee. I wanted to give you time to calm down." "Well, then let's get back to my original question. Did Slime drive you home?" I decided to give her one more chance to dodge my question. "Stop calling her names. She's my best friend and a good person." My wife snorted like a big bad wolf, but unfortunately there was no straw house nearby to blow down. "That good person drove you home?" I thought she would finally give me an answer. However, you would think that after 10 years of marriage, I should know this woman. "Ralph, I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated. I'm going to bed." She left the room, then poked her head back in the door. "And don't think you're sleeping in our bed tonight." As she turned to leave, I replied, "I don't care. I don't like leftovers." That stopped her. "What are you accusing me of? I've never cheated on you." She came back, stood over me with her hands on her hips, and looked at me indignantly. "I saw your dance partner and the man who drove my loving wife home." I calmly sipped the nectar from my glass. "Let's see. You left the club before 1 a.m. and spent more than 2 hours with him drinking coffee? He was worried about me after you left, so he came with us to the cafe." She says it so convincingly, with her beautiful voice and cute lips. "You, your best friend, and—" "Matt?" I asked. "Yes, of course. There was nothing going on, Ralph. You and your fragile ego need to get over it. It was just one damn dance, not a romance." She growled. I took out my phone. "I'll call Matt. I don't think we paid for our drinks, and we probably owe them for 2 hours of coffee if they were there to support you. I'll find out how much we owe." I noticed she was starting to panic a little. "Ralph!" She almost shouted my name. "It's 3 in the morning. You can't call them." "Why not? If they were with you at the cafe, they're probably still up," I suggested, dialing the number. "Or Matt will tell me they left with the others, like usual, that he had to go to bed at midnight, like always." Claire, defeated, sat back down. "Okay, it was just Ben and me at coffee. I was upset and didn't want to rush home to fight." "And you thought that if you stayed until 3 in the morning and then kissed on the driveway, you could avoid the fight?" I finished my scotch and wondered whether to leave the taste of single malt in my mouth or move on to the blended bottle. "We didn't kiss on the driveway. Damn it, Ralph, I didn't cheat on you." Claire was now playing on my emotions, including my tears. "Claire, I saw everything." I pointed to the gap in the curtains. "It was just a kiss. He was so sweet and worried about me, I just—" She fell silent when she saw the look on my face. "I wanted to thank him. Am I supposed to be happy that he's just a good listener? I mean, for something more serious like sympathetic understanding, sex would be the appropriate way to show gratitude." I growled. Then I got angry at myself for showing my feelings. Clearly, the whiskey wasn't conducive to a calm conversation. "That was ugly of me. I'm sorry. I'm sure your thank you is always appreciated." I sighed. "Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't own you or your body. You can sleep with whoever you want. I've put up with your disrespect for years. I gave up what I loved for you. I stayed and put up with everything for the sake of the child, and for Ben's sake alone, I forgave you because I didn't care, and it was easier that way." Claire looked shocked, then angry. "What are you saying? You endured? Endured what? I never cheated on you." She jumped up from the chair, unable to sit still. "What did you sacrifice? You sacrificed nothing. If anyone sacrificed anything, it was me. I was pregnant, for God's sake, and I was feeding Ben. I love him, but my body isn't what it used to be. I gave up my career to raise your child, run your house, entertain your friends. What did you do? What did you give up?" I thought of the big, angry wolf again because Claire was now really choking with indignation. "Sit down, damn it, and I'll tell you." I got up and took out the Johnny Walker. Claire had ruined my mood, so why not? I didn't offer my wife a drink. "Claire, do you remember when we first met? And when we were newlyweds?" The Black Label scotch was pretty good, but I downed the first sip in one gulp. I should have savored it little by little. "Of course I remember," my loving wife replied sharply. I half closed my eyes, remembering the best times. "We didn't have much money. I was still in college, and you were working as a clerk. But we tried to spend as much time together as possible. Being apart was painful." I paused for a moment, choking on memories of my beautiful, loving wife. I hid the pause by taking another sip of scotch. "Remember how we used to spend our evenings?" I looked at my angry wife. "We played games just to spend time together when we didn't have any money. Cribbage, backgammon, cards, checkers, chess, anything just to be together. I usually won, but when you won, you would scream and cheer as if you had won the Olympics. I loved that, your smiling face, so happy. Of course, I hated losing and immediately demanded a rematch. I admit now that it's a flaw in my character, but I really hate losing. I don't think I was a bad loser. I didn't humiliate you or try to belittle your victory. I never said I should have won or that you wouldn't have won if, or anything else that might have diminished your joy. I always congratulated you. I just wanted another chance to win. I enjoyed it, and I thought you did too. You teased me for being a sore loser, and I think I took it in stride. I thought it was part of our friendly rivalry. But then we couldn't play any games without you starting to talk about what a loser I was and how my fragile little ego couldn't handle losing. I looked at her and shook my head. I know you're going to brush it off and say it was just jokes, but do you know what it's like when your wife humiliates you in front of your friends and family? Remember the last time we played a game? I mean, you and me, not at some party with your friends where we're expected to participate, but just you and me spending time together? She looked at me thoughtfully, then shook her head. That was years ago. But what does that have to do with anything? We had Ben. We got really busy, that's all. No, that was before Ben, I said. We stopped playing games long before Ben was born. I just didn't want to play anymore. Maybe I should have talked to you about it. But I figured if being a bad loser was so important to you, I'd rather just stop playing. I was surprised to find my glass empty and refilled it. It's funny that in my entire life, the only person who ever accused me of being a sore loser was my loving wife. But in the end, I decided that since I won more often than I lost, what really bothered you wasn't my attitude toward losing, but the fact that I won. For some reason, I made you feel inadequate. I can't help it. I'm good at games and I'm lucky. I tried to lose, but that just made you brag louder and insult me more. Even your friends started joining in. So, in order not to bother you with my wins or losses, even though I always loved games, I just stopped playing with you, except when we were in company, and it would have been rude not to play. You didn't even notice. Whenever I tried to politely decline a game, you told everyone it was because I was a sore loser. She muttered something again about how we were just busy. Remember how we used to go for walks in the woods, to the beach, or to the mountains? We still did that when Ben was little. We kept doing it without you. But remember the last time we went for a walk like that, just the two of us? We spent a lot of time outside, again because we didn't have any money, and it was always so beautiful, and it was a reason to be with you. I loved you so much and loved it when you were mine alone in the quiet of the forest. Besides, I was trying to teach you and Ben what my father taught me about nature, but that seemed to annoy you. I remember how you started telling my son that his father was a know-it-all, but then I stepped on a spider web and panicked a little, thinking the spider might crawl on me. I'm not afraid of spiders, but I don't want them crawling on my collar. So I asked you to brush it off and make sure it wasn't on me. Well, you turned it into full-blown arachnophobia. You shouldn't have mentioned spiders, or you'll start telling everyone how afraid I am of them. That's funny. I've always been fascinated by spiders. I showed you their webs and explained what kinds of spiders there are and how they help fight insects. They're amazing creatures, but I don't want them crawling on me and biting me. I think that's perfectly normal. I've seen you panic when you see a spider on the wall or ceiling and ask me to kill it and get rid of it. When was the last time we went for a walk in the woods? I raised my hand. Don't. I don't remember either. It's been 5 years and you're still talking about spiders. You'll say again that you're just teasing, but I think you need to humiliate me in front of others. Most of the time you're a loving wife, but if you think I have a weakness or a flaw, you just can't help pointing it out until everyone feels uncomfortable. I don't do that. God, you can't take a little teasing, can you? And no one but you feels awkward. She snorted again. Sorry if I hurt your feelings. When she dismissed my comments so sharply, I remembered one more thing I had refused to talk to her about. Yes, Claire. People were uncomfortable. Maybe not your friends, who seemed to enjoy humiliating me, but remember when I had friends of my own. We hung out with them until you pushed them out of our lives. They listened to you humiliate me and asked if I was sure you loved me. I remember Alice telling me that, judging by the way you talked about me, you didn't seem like someone who loved me. Alice was my best friend's wife. Now she's a widow. Alice, that bitch. She never loved me. And that whole crowd was so boring I had nothing to talk to them about. They didn't know anything. She looked at her fingernails. And I didn't cut them. We just made new friends. No, you cut them off. Although I admit they weren't fighting to include us in their circle anymore. You made them feel uncomfortable when you called me names. And they were boring, at least to you. They couldn't talk about anything but history, art, science, nature, computers, politics. Nothing that would interest you. Unlike your current friends. Our friends, dear. They're our friends, not mine, she corrected me. No, they're definitely your friends. When we get together, the guys can only talk about sports or cars, and the women, as far as I can tell, you girls don't really talk. Except for TV shows and celebrity news, you just argue, criticize, and complain about other people. In my opinion, you're a bunch of judgmental bitches. Sure, I heard how wittily you discussed my sexual abilities. What did you say? I took a sip of scotch, trying to remember exactly. He couldn't find my G-spot even if I drew a map on it. That got a lot of laughs, didn't it? But when I heard it and joined the conversation, you didn't like the laughter that followed, did you? Damn it. You implied I'm a slut. She glared at him, remembering that moment. I just said he usually couldn't find it because some other guy was covering it with his hand. I smiled, remembering that. I thought it was funny at the time. But yeah, they're your friends, but I stopped doing anything with mine because every weekend, every free night, you spend with your girlfriends. I only see my friends when you go to the spa with your girlfriends, but you and them seem to like it better that way. Those are just some of the things I gave up. Sure, I could have argued, but what for? To fight? I could never get you to stop teasing me, even though I asked you to. I stopped when the only result of my requests was that you looked at me with surprise when you talked about me being a poor loser who is afraid of spiders and said, "Oh, I shouldn't say that, should I? It hurts little Ralphie's feelings." I put up with it longer than I should have. I shouldn't have put up with it at all. I thought I was old enough to handle a little teasing, especially since for a long time it only happened in front of jerks whose opinions I didn't care about. But every comment you made, every time your friends joined in, every time, it slowly eroded my love for you. I finished the last sip of scotch and stood up. Putting the bottle of Johnny Walker back in the cabinet, I continued. Well, maybe it was a mistake to put up with it. I don't think it helped Ben, and now it's time to fix things. Ben isn't getting the love he deserves, and if I don't want to tease you in return, then there's no reason for any of this. I don't care anymore. Dance with whoever you want. Kiss them, hug them, sleep with them. Do whatever you want. The day after tomorrow, it won't have anything to do with me. I'll take my fragile ego to a lawyer and start filing papers so you can do whatever you want with whoever you want. Go ahead. I'll take every last penny from you, and then some, Ralphie. She knew I hated that nickname. I got up and started to put the bottle back in the cupboard, but decided she should walk me to the guest room. I stopped in the doorway. I just remembered one more thing I gave up years ago. Something that, if you hadn't killed my love for you with 1,000 little cuts, would have shattered it into pieces. Remember John Wilson? Or Pete Riordan? Or maybe that band, what was it called? I looked at Cheryl. She stared at me like a deer in the headlights. What? She stammered. Oh yeah, Lifesavers, I remembered. Lifesavers, she corrected me automatically. They were all paramedics. Oh yeah, well they sure saved you and Slimy's life during those orgies, didn't they? I turned to go back to bed. Then I stopped caring. But then I found out you were leaving Ben alone downstairs while you were busy with your lover upstairs. You're getting a summons in the mail this week for adultery. It might not change anything, but it's my chance to get back at you, you whore. And my lawyer says that's pretty solid grounds for getting custody of the kids. You have an amazingly long list of lovers, huh? My lawyer is listing them all, at least all the ones we have proof of. By the way, thanks for insisting on getting a security system installed. Let's see, John, Pete, Babnick, and Will Trellis, Jim Johnson, the guys from Fire Station 78. Oh, and Slizzy will be thrilled, Matt. Or does Ezzy already know that you're sleeping with her husband along with the guys who sleep with her? Claire turned pale. You can't. You can't list all those men. You'll destroy their marriages, tear their families apart. No, honey, I won't. You already have. I'm sending all the relevant wives and girlfriends my evidence on a convenient DVD so they won't be caught off guard. I included my lawyer's business card. I wouldn't go to work tomorrow if I were you. How many of your co-workers' husbands fondled you while I was looking for him? I looked at my wife, who was now openly sobbing, defeated. You don't need to tattoo that map, dear, I teased. All your lovers will have to do is stop any random guy and ask for directions. I'm sure they know where it is. My name is Gary Smith, and this story is about my wife Louise, her best friend Penny, me, and Penny's husband Darren. A few weeks ago, something happened that threatened our marriage, and as a result, I asked Louise to tell all our friends, relatives, colleagues, and everyone else in our circle about what happened and, more importantly, what we did to save our marriage. When I told my wife that I wanted her to tell everyone we know about what happened, she wasn't thrilled at first, saying she didn't want to tell the whole world or write something and publish it because it would be embarrassing for us. I understand that it would be awkward for her and Penny. Yes, it's a little harsh, but I don't want there to be any misunderstandings among our mutual friends, relatives, and colleagues because there are already rumors about Louise and Penny. However, Louise, with the help of her friend Penny, wrote an email with a confession, announcement, story. Penny and her husband are at our house right now. Darren agrees with my decision, but Penny understands that it might be awkward for her and her husband, but she understands. Right now, we are sitting in our study-guest room. Louise is ready to press send on the computer, and the email will be sent to my family, my wife's family, our friends, and even our colleagues. We both estimate that there are about 100 contacts in our shared email inbox. If my wife, with whom I have lived for 20 years, presses that button, all these people will find out what she has done and how she has jeopardized our marriage. Louise, I know this is a difficult decision, but honestly, it's the only way I can see to make sure everyone knows exactly what happened. And there will be no misunderstandings, I said to Louise in a conciliatory tone. I took her other hand and she smiled ironically. What could be so terrible? Gary, I know I messed up and I know you've lost trust in me, but if it helps you regain at least some of that trust, I'll do it. She pressed the button. Louise copied all our contacts into an email. The calls and messages should start in about 5 minutes. Louise. Okay, here goes. This is what happened the night my best friend Penny and I went out. Everyone reading this knows me and my husband, and some of you know the jerk who almost ruined my marriage. However, in case anyone doesn't know me or the circumstances that led to the events of a few days ago, I'll tell you who I am and what led up to this. But first, a little bit about my husband and me. Yes, I know our families already know our story, but some of you may not. My name is Louise Smith, and my husband and I have been married for 20 years. We don't have children by choice. We are both 45 years old and met in a pub in Oxford. Some drunk idiot tried to talk to me and my friends, but we weren't interested. My attention was caught by a young man my age. He had long black hair, was thin and pale, and was wearing a black t-shirt with Sisters of Mercy written on it, black jeans, heavy Dr. Martens boots, and a long black coat. He was a goth and was sitting across from us, quietly drinking cider and reading a book. I kept looking at him, and he looked shyly at me. I was wearing a leather mini dress. Yes, it was a rock pub, and I was and still am a rock chick, and you can wear pretty much anything in a pub as long as it's not elegant or casual. It could get pretty rough there in the evenings, but overall the atmosphere was good. That night there was one very drunk idiot who tried to talk to me and started annoying me and my friends. It got to the point where he leaned over me and started staring at my breasts. I admit that the dress was tight and revealing, but compared to how some of the other women in the pub were dressed, it was quite modest. The dress was high-necked and very short. It was the fashion at the time, and a 20-year-old girl like me could walk into a rock pub and not be harassed or made lewd comments by stupid young hipsters or chavs, as they were called back then. So back then, more than 20 years ago, I was tall, slim, with breasts slightly above average, long black hair, and dark skin due to my Mexican roots. My mother is Mexican. My father is English. Yes, men and some women looked at me. Yes, I had a few boyfriends in college. I went on dates, but no one won my heart. Yes, I slept with some of them, and yes, it was normal, but nothing really good happened until I met my future husband, Gary. In the UK, the age of consent is 16, and I admit that between the ages of 16 and 18, I experimented. Gary never asked me about my ex-boyfriends, and I never asked him about his ex-girlfriends. I'm not interested in that. When we started dating, we were faithful to each other and remain faithful to this day. Anyway, this idiot kept hitting on me and trying to be charming, but he wasn't getting anywhere. At that point, Gary, the goth, stood up and walked up behind the idiot. "Leave the ladies alone, they're not interested in you." He said it calmly and quietly so as not to draw attention to us. The idiot turned around stupidly and said in a loud, drunken voice, "Back off, Gary. I can talk to any woman I want." At that moment, the pub fell silent. Gary grabbed the man by the collar and threw him face first into the wall. Then he turned to me and said, "Sorry, I don't know your name. I'm Gary." "I'm Louise. Nice to meet you, Gary," I said with a smile. "Likewise, Louise, what should I do with this piece of shit?" he asked, still pressing the drunk man against the wall. "Gary, it doesn't matter. Just make sure he doesn't come near me, then buy me a drink and sit with me." My friends smiled and made room for him. He pushed the drunk out the door and threw him onto the street. Gary came over, sat down next to me, and we started talking about music, beer, books, and life. 20 years later, we're still talking about music, books, wine, beer, movies, and life. Gary still dresses in black. I dress in black too, even the suit I wear to work. I work for a college professor in Oxford. I've been doing it for 6 years. It's a good job with a good salary. Gary worked for 10 years in an auto parts warehouse, where he was a foreman, and before that he worked in construction and engineering. He's a certified engineer. He's strong, tough, and never ceases to amaze me, both mentally and physically. His long black hair has grown out, and now I shave his head every 2 weeks, and he has a goatee that makes him look a little rough but handsome at the same time. He looks a little scary, but I know he loves me very much, and I trust him with my life. We still go to rock bars, and sometimes I get up and sing karaoke. Gary, unfortunately, can't sing, but after a couple of beers, he thinks he can. I still wear leather tops, leather pants, and skirts outside of work. Yes, it gets attention, but I only dress for my husband. If someone approaches me, I immediately tell them that I am very happy in my marriage, and that they cannot change that. I only dance with very close friends and family, never with men I don't know. It's my choice. If I'm out with my husband, why would I dance with a stranger? Similarly, when Penny and I go out together, we don't dance with strangers, which really annoys some men. I don't care what size they are, although it's mostly black men who talk about it, and apparently my life will change if I try. But Gary is right for me, and I'm happy with him. I don't need another man, black or white, to satisfy me. We have a varied and satisfying sex life. We don't have a specific day for it. Neither of us is particularly sexual. We do it once or twice a week, which is more than enough for both of us. For me, it's the quality that matters, not the quantity. Gary turns me on every time, and I know how to turn him on. Yes, you can be close to someone without having full sex. We both go to the gym and train in kickboxing to stay in shape. We are both ranked pretty high in kickboxing and often spar with each other. But I think Gary holds back his punches, he never hurts me. And sometimes I know he lets me win. That's our life and our love life. Now I'm going to tell everyone what I did wrong, and it will be a warning to other wives and girlfriends. I created a group of friends at work who seemed happy in their marriages. They talked about their husbands all the time, and everything seemed so positive, and they were curious about Gary. I told them everything they needed to know, but I didn't tell them much about my personal life. It seemed to annoy them that I didn't tell them how big Gary was. Anyway, on the night I almost ruined my marriage, these women were involved, and one woman in particular. It was Friday night, and Gary was working the late shift at the warehouse. Several women from work, I won't name names, it doesn't matter, convinced me to go with them. I will mention one close friend, Penny, who I work with. We have been friends for several years, and yes, she is married, and Gary, Penny, her husband Darren, and I often go out together. We are good friends. Penny was persuaded to go with the group. There were 10 women in total, and the main organizer of the party was my boss. But for legal reasons, I can't mention her name as I'm in a lawsuit with her. I asked Gary if he could pick us up later. Unfortunately, Darren was also busy at work. He is a manager at a home goods store, and today was inventory day, so he was busy almost all night. Gary's shift ended at 11 p.m., and he said he would pick us up after work, or if we wanted to come earlier, to just text him. That evening, I wore my usual black leather skirt and black t-shirt, thigh-high leather boots, and a leather jacket. Yes, this is my usual outfit for going out, and yes, it attracts attention, but Gary and I firmly believe that a woman should have the right to wear what she wants without worrying about being harassed by men or women. Penny was wearing her usual skirt and blouse, high heels, and a short leather jacket. She's our age and just as attractive as I am, and yes, we both get noticed when we go out together, but of course, we usually go out with our husbands. She is about 5 feet 7 inches, with a curvy figure and short brown hair. Like Gary and me, she and Darren have decided not to have children. That evening, like any other, we weren't looking to meet anyone, and I was determined to get home at a reasonable hour. We both sent photos to our husbands, received kisses and hearts in response, and replied in kind. Then we contacted a local taxi company and ordered a car to take us into town. Here I want to say something. Penny and I often go out on the town, mostly with our husbands, but sometimes without them. We go out together about once a month, not regularly or every month, of course. We usually go out as a foursome. Penny and I usually find a pub, coffee shop, or club and just enjoy drinks and maybe dancing. To avoid men asking us out on dates, we pretend to be friends, like lesbians. We sit next to each other, hold hands, and if necessary, kiss or touch each other like lovers, but neither of us is bisexual or lesbian. We both love men too much and love our husbands too much to do anything with each other. Of course, this pretense can cause other problems, as Penny will confirm. Women, not necessarily lesbians, may misinterpret our displays of closeness and ask us to dance, buy them a drink, or give them our phone number. We always decline and explain that we are both heterosexual and just keeping men at a distance. Penny can tell you all about these adventures. Anyway, I digress. The purpose of this letter is to tell people how Penny and I almost became victims. We met up with a group of women from work and were having a good time, drinking a lot of champagne, and in a very short period of time, Penny and I stopped feeling any pain. The other women in our group were just as drunk. Penny can handle alcohol a little better than I can, so she told me everything that happened that night. In the evening, we started dancing as a group, although dancing is probably not the right word. In my case, it was more like staggering. I admit, everything became a bit blurry, everything seemed funny, and everyone seemed to be having a good time. At that point, it was just us women dancing and drinking, and I fell twice. Of course, in hindsight, it's clear that Penny and I were being poured more than the other girls. Yes, someone deliberately wanted to get us drunk and make us vulnerable. But at the beginning of our marriage, Gary and I agreed that if I found myself alone or with Penny and felt uncomfortable, I would send him a smiley face with a worried expression. That meant he had to find me using the tracker on my phone. Yes, we both had trackers on our phones. We almost never used this feature, but at that moment, I needed my husband to know where I was and to come quickly. Sober, I could beat most people in a fight thanks to my experience, but drunk? No way. Realizing something was wrong, I fumbled for my phone in my purse and sent a drunken message. After that, everything became very blurry. Faces appeared and disappeared, and I remember Penny holding my hand and asking if I was okay. I remember trying to stand up but not being able to. Penny later told me that I couldn't stop smiling and giggling, and I don't giggle. Penny also told me later that when she tried to help me get up and go to the ladies' room, our boss stopped us and seemed happy that I was coming out of it. At this point, I will say that Penny is my best friend and my hero, and now I know that she is the one who saved me from being gang raped. Yes, Gary and Penny's husband physically saved me and Penny, but in my heart, Penny is now my friend for life. If I were a lesbian, I would definitely repay her with sex, but we are both straight, so that will never happen. Penny later told me that our boss and two men who appeared to be his acquaintances, but whom we didn't know, insisted on taking me to a separate room and leaving her behind, but she said she would follow me wherever I went. Penny also told me later that our boss looked at both of us and said to the men, "Take them both when I'm done with Louise." Again, I don't know what really happened next. All I remember is being dragged into a dark room where my boss touched me and pushed me onto a chair. Then he started trying to kiss me, but in my drunken, dazed state, I couldn't resist. I heard a voice telling me to wake up and fight back, but the voice faded away. I felt my skirt being lifted. The only feelings I remember are regret and anger. Deep down, I knew that letting someone touch me like that was wrong, and somewhere inside, I was trying to snap out of it. Penny later told me that my head was thrown back in the chair and that our boss and one of his friends were kissing me. She also said that I weakly tried to push their hands away. Penny later told me that she distracted the other man by stripping down to her underwear, kissing him, and pressing herself against him. When he was completely distracted by her and her kisses, she wrapped her legs around him and tripped him, and when he fell on his back, she picked up the chair and hit him. Penny then stepped away from the unconscious man and picked up the chair again. She later told me that the sound of the chair hitting the other man's head gave her immense pleasure. He also fell and lost consciousness, and our boss didn't seem to notice because she was too busy kissing my body. This may explain why she didn't notice Penny coming up behind her and pulling her away from me. She shook her until our boss hit the door and was momentarily stunned. At that moment, the door flew open. Two very angry men literally kicked the door down, and it fell on our boss, pinning him down. Gary, Darren, and to some extent Penny told me what happened next. Gary came over to me, looked at me as if he wanted to say something, but instead helped me up and get dressed. Darren did the same for Penny. As soon as Penny and I were dressed, the two husbands lunged at the two men, simultaneously punching them in the face, breaking their noses, and then our husbands were about to seriously beat up these two men. It probably would have gone on forever, but at that moment, two armed police officers and two club security guards burst through the broken door, demanding an explanation. I was still in a semi-conscious state, but Penny, despite still suffering from the effects of alcohol, explained what had happened. Of course, there was no need to do so because there were surveillance cameras in the room that had recorded everything that had happened. We found out about this after the police took all of us, including our boss and his two friends, to the station to give statements when everyone woke up. I was taken to a local hospital and had my blood tested. Penny also had her blood tested, and it was later confirmed that a mild drug had been slipped into my drink, which impaired my ability to think clearly. Penny was also under the influence of the drug, but not as severely. That's all that happened. Penny literally saved me from a fate worse than death. The club's security cameras recorded everything that happened in the room. I was in shock and ashamed of how easily I had gotten myself into this situation. Looking at the situation objectively, I can understand why Gary might have thought that I liked being touched. Of course, Gary never said that, but I can imagine that thought crossed his mind. I admit that Penny and I had to work hard to convince our husbands that we weren't trying to cheat on them. Of course, when they found out about the drugs and the setup, they understood that it wasn't our fault and that we were victims, and they were both very supportive. But for the record, I want to state that Gary obviously stayed with me, and the same goes for Darren and Penny. They both said they weren't going anywhere. Darren and Penny still live with us in our house, which is big enough for all of us, and we help each other out. Penny and I are seeing a therapist, and our husbands sit in the room and support us. It's mostly helping us overcome our issues with trusting strangers. Penny and I trust our husbands, but only them. Now, for the more practical reasons I'm writing this letter. I want everyone who reads this to know that I should have been more careful in choosing my friends, not so trusting, and yes, not drinking so much and being more careful about who has access to my drinks. That's what happened to me that night. Fortunately, I have a very supportive husband and a best friend. Right now, I have trust issues and can only tolerate a few close friends and family members. Penny and Darren are two of them. Gary is patient with me and very supportive. I admit that sometimes I feel like a victim, but I won't let that ruin my life or my marriage. Thank you for reading my letter. I just want to warn you that Gary and I have started fighting again. I have hit him several times, imagining that he is my former boss. Gary says he won't let me win, but God help anyone who makes me angry, because I will never be a victim again. In case anyone doesn't know, our former boss is in prison. Penny, the club management, and I got him convicted, and he and his friends are also spending a lot of time behind bars. Penny and I switched jobs. Now I work with Gary, and Penny works with her husband. Gary. I was right, our phones were ringing with messages and calls. During my wife's former boss's trial, we were told not to disclose anything. No one wanted the press involved, and we didn't want our families dragged into it until everything settled down. Louise read some of the text messages and listened to a few voice messages. Overall, they were supportive, and our families wanted to know how they could help. We listened to some stupid voice messages and text messages from some of our religious friends who claimed that Penny and my wife got what they deserved because apparently wives who go out without their husbands are just looking for trouble. And of course, their clothes also made it clear that they were looking for other people to have fun with. Fortunately, there were only a few such messages. I hugged my wife, and Darren did the same with his wife. I stood up, poured 4 glasses of wine, and we drank to ourselves. I admit it was hard to see my wife in that chair, surrounded by all those people. I will never forget it. However, I understand that neither my wife nor Penny are to blame. I know it was a setup, and I know that my wife needs love and support, and of course she will get both in abundance. Our life has changed now. Louise is very careful about who she talks to and keeps a close eye on where we go. It doesn't bother me, but I want the friendly, outgoing woman I married back. As for our sex life, at first things weren't great, but now everything is back to normal. I don't mind that my wife brings us both to multiple orgasms. Afterwards, we kiss tenderly and reassure each other of our love. Our life has changed, but it's for the better.